Hello class, in this video I'm going to break down some of the source work in the persuasive example essay about electric cars. So we're going to look at the work cited, talk about some of the choices made in the sources, and then go through and look at some of the ways those sources are integrated into paragraphs and used in the argumentation of this essay. So first let's go down and look at the work cited. And what I want to do here is just kind of scan through the titles because the sources that you find are going to either reflect the argument you want to make, or they're going to determine the argument that you make if you're not selecting them correctly, right? So here's what I mean. If we look at the work cited and look at the titles, charging plug-in electric vehicles at home, how much do electric cars cost? Total cost of ownership and externalities of conventional hybrid and electric vehicles. Societal life cycle cost of cars with alternative fuels engines. Impact of electric range and fossil fuel price level on the economics of plug-in hybrid vehicles and greenhouse gas abatement costs. Total cost of ownership and market share for hybrid and electric vehicles in the UK, US, and Japan. The influence of financial incentives and other socioeconomic factors on electric vehicle adoption. Long-term cost of ownership comparative analysis between electric vehicles and internal combustion engine vehicles. Those are the titles of all of the sources cited in the works cited page for this essay. So all you have to do is read those titles and you have an idea of the kind of argument that's going to be made, right? What kind of argument is that? It's going to be about efficiency and cost. We even see the word cost showing up time and time again itself in these titles. So what's the relationship between the sources you find and the argument that you make? Well, it's important to have a clearly defined research question so that you can know what you need to look for, and so you can identify sources that will help you support that argument. If you do not have a clearly defined research question and you're kind of like, well, I'll just see what's out there, then you may find that you're having to create something that fits what you're able to find. You wouldn't have it be the other way around, because you want the driver of a persuasive essay to be your belief in your argument, right? When you're writing something persuasive, you are saying, hey reader, I want to persuade you of X, Y, or Z. So you don't want to be kind of at the mercy of the first 10 results you find in a search engine, right? Or in a research database. If we go through this paper a little bit, we can see some of the ways citations are used. And as always, I'm giving you a breakdown of this essay, but I expect you to read through it yourself because I'm not going to cover every aspect of the paper. What we can say in general about this paper is that it uses in-text citation extensively, which makes sense. So if you think about summarizing or paraphrasing lots of information that's rather technical, that's about findings of comparative cost of one type of vehicle versus another, you're going to have to be citing all of that. That's not information that is common knowledge. It's not something that you probably know from your own experience, right? Probably. So you're going to have to be making sure you cite those things in the paragraphs in in-text citation. At the same time, things like miles per gallon or the cost of gas is not something that you really need a quotation for. Generally, material that is quoted is being quoted for a specific purpose. You're quoting it because somebody important said it. You're quoting it because it cannot be paraphrased effectively. So in general, technical data, numbers, statistics, that's material that can be paraphrased or included in the body of your writing and cited in text. So here's just a good quick example of an in-text citation. This is about charging EVs. And so we can see here an example of the author being used in the flow of the sentence. So here we have Özdemir and Hartmann calculated the optimal electric range. So they've given us the author in the paraphrase of the information that came from the source, right? Once that information is wrapped up, we have the internal citation, parenthesis Özdemir and Hartmann 186. And in this case, you could actually have simply parenthesis 186 close parenthesis, since we have already mentioned the names of the authors in the flow of that sentence. The rest of the paragraph is going to be more general, and so they're moving away from the specific stuff like how many miles, what's the range, and drawing some conclusions themselves. And if we look down at the next paragraph, recharging the batteries for EV requires electricity instead of petroleum or gasoline. We have lots of data, $2.77, 70-mile range, 2,064 cents. We only have one internal citation, so I should expect that all of that data is coming from this one source with the title 1 million. And if we think about the Sourcework in general, this is an essay that has a number of relatively short paragraphs. I want to say there are 11, so maybe like 10 content paragraphs in here where points are being made. These are all relatively short, and the writer here is kind of doing more or less one source, one paragraph, which can be okay. In this specific case, the writer has to make a number of small points about the cost efficiency of electric vehicles, so that seems appropriate. The way the sources are integrated into your argument, of course, depends on the context. If there were a more complicated argument, you would probably expect to need 2 to 3 sources per paragraph, so it is really going to depend. In this case, one source, one paragraph seems appropriate. In many cases, that might not be the case. Another interesting thing to note is that this writer, while they have made extensive use of paraphrasing and internal citation, have not used quotations extensively. There are a couple of quotations, but these seem to be used to bolster their claims about the impact and severity of climate change and environmental change caused by fossil fuels. So most of the information is data that can be paraphrased, and they've chosen to use the quotations to back up something that they perhaps perceive as something they need to emphasize to their audience, right? They're appealing to authority and ethos with those quotations that tell the reader how serious climate change is. So the ways that you choose to use quotations and choose to use paraphrase are going to depend on your specific goal for a point that you're making.